It is August, which means schools are back in session in many places across the globe, but especially here in the Western Hemisphere. I remember my first year teaching, I was very excited, but also felt like I was going in blind and had no clue what to expect. If you are interested in working in Latin America or in a Spanish-speaking country, especially teaching English abroad, then this video is for you. Maybe you've already accepted the job or even moved abroad, or maybe you haven't even chosen the right TEFL course yet. If so, I highly suggest the International TEFL Academy, which is where I got my TEFL certification. You can check out my review of the course here. I'll link the course below with my personalized link. By using my link, you can get the textbook for free, which is a $45 value instead of just having access to it during the course, which is what I had. Still wish I could have had access to the whole thing, always. So let's say you're interested in moving abroad, possibly in Latin America. Today I'm going to share some things with you that you should definitely know before going there. If you're already there, then this is also for you, because I knew when I was there, I still would have liked to hear some things to expect, some cultural expectations explained, and I'll do some of that in this video today. I taught in 2 brick-and-mortar schools, one in Honduras, the other in the Dominican Republic, before switching to online English tutoring. One thing I want to note, I'm not going to pretend I know what it's like teaching in every single Latin American country. I know they're all different, they all have separate cultures, but these are just my experiences teaching in Honduras and the Dominican Republic. So these are just things that I've observed and commonalities between the 2 countries that I can assume maybe other countries have these as well. And you can do your research as well, like 10 differences between the US and Latin American cultures, and you'll get plenty of results there. But these are based on my experiences. I also want to note that, yes, I realize you cannot just generalize all of Latin America. Third thing I want to note, I'm mainly focusing on Spanish-speaking countries. Some of these points will talk about speaking Spanish, and I do realize not all of Latin America speaks Spanish. So please, hold your comments. I understand there are countries that speak French and Portuguese, and I understand. Today we're just focusing on Spanish-speaking countries. There might be similarities across the cultures with other countries as well, but I've never lived in other countries, so I can't say for sure what they are like. As always, this is my experience, and I would love to hear other teachers' experiences below in the comments, so please share so we can all learn. Without much further ado, let's just get started with the list. It's raining outside now, so if you can hear the rain, I'm so sorry. I closed the windows and I'm drenched in sweat right now. But the show must go on. I'm already here. This list is in no particular order, although I did group the different expectations by topic. And the first idea is the idea of time and just cultural differences in general. So let's just get started. First being, things will not start on time, but you are definitely expected to be at work on time. Don't expect to be able to get there late, even though meetings and school events might start late. Minutes, even hours late, you have to get there on time. I remember this being a topic in many meetings. Teachers, please make sure you're getting to school on time and leaving at the correct time. I said that a lot. This also means that many students will come to school late, oftentimes missing the entire first class. I would start my class sometimes with maybe half the students there. That's definitely one expectation to have, because the school does start kind of early. My school in Honduras started at 7 a.m. and the one in the DR started at 8 a.m. Second idea is that plans will get changed last minute. There were last minute holidays or just entire days taken off of school that were notified to the parents last minute. I don't know how I'd feel about that if I were a parent, but as a teacher, I was like, okay, sure, like maybe I still have to come to the school, but like they don't have students today. There were things that were thrown at us last minute, and that's just the way it was. Third, more generally, there will be cultural differences. That is just an expectation to have. Maybe depending on your familiarity with Latin American culture or your background, you might know to expect some of these more than others, but just a few to get started that I definitely noticed. One big thing is the idea of an individual culture or a community culture. US is definitely more individual-based. We're driven and motivated to do things by ourselves, and in Latin America, the culture is very community-based. Family is very important. People are very friendly and sociable. So that will help you to get used to it. You'll have lots of coworkers who will reach out to help and be very friendly with you. Next, people are also more affectionate there. Personal space is just not as existent. The kids will hug you a lot, which, I don't know, coming from the US, I was like, is this something I have to be concerned about? Because you never know, but I would say in general, you don't really have to be concerned about it. And the third cultural difference I would say is that it's a little bit less organized based on my experience. I don't want to generalize for all schools again, but based on my experience, the US can be very organized. We have this way of life and we just tend to follow it, but there things are more freestyle, we'll say. Fourth, people are often less politically correct. So you might get comments about your weight or your size. Maybe not from like students, but in general, the culture is just a little bit less politically correct. And you might find things that are like, whoa, isn't that like racist? It's like, well, that's just how it is. For example, here, I heard people say recently, kids won't feel bad when other kids bully them as school because they already get made fun of in the house, which is kind of terrible, but that's just how it is. And the last cultural difference within this third point is that, at least in the US standpoint, often Latin America has more of a politically conservative environment. So take that as you will. I am not talking politics here today. Which leads us right to the next one, number 4. Your school will probably teach or uphold Christian values, even if they don't publicly advertise themselves as a Christian school. Personally, this is not a problem for me since I am a Christian, but just for you to be aware in case you aren't, or in case that is something you don't want to deal with. For example, in Honduras, there was an expectation that teachers would lead a prayer in the morning at the first class. It was just a little prayer. It was kind of just a recitation because it was on the wall of every classroom what you're supposed to say in the morning. Let me say, sometimes it happened, sometimes it didn't, but you could also have the option to have a student lead the prayer. And that was just something that was expected, and prayers were said before sometimes meetings, definitely events. So even if they say, I know my one school said, we're open to people of all religions, all backgrounds, but I mean, they still prayed every morning, read a Bible verse in the assembly, which for me, again, I said is not a problem. Number 5, talking more about work environment and what to expect from your job, is you almost certainly will not make as much as a teacher in the United States. I think I know of maybe one school is kind of promoted as the best in the country here in the DR, that I think teachers might make a comparable salary as if they're working in the US, but they also need a teacher certification. Many schools, you don't need a teacher certification. It helped that I did have a TEFL certification, but my major is English. I didn't study education outside of that. And I didn't have a problem getting hired. I mean, I didn't get accepted at all the schools I applied to, but it wasn't personally a problem. And many of my coworkers did not have a TEFL certification or education certification. Having said that, you might not make enough to be comparable to a teacher in the US, but you'll make enough to live comfortably where you are. It won't be as much as salaries I hear of in Asia or in the Middle East, but they will have some extra bonuses like paying for your flight at the end of the year for completing the year, or here in the DR, there's a fee that you pay to overstay the tourist visa, and the school paid that fee if you had stayed the whole year. So that was helpful too. Also, both of my schools provided a place to live, but you may not find that everywhere. In Honduras, I was paid around $1,000 a month. I did have a bank account there, and in the DR, I was paid around $800 a month. Both places provided housing for free. In Honduras, I did have to pay utilities, but not in the DR. Food and things like that are on you. Again, these are just my experiences with my 2 schools, so I'm not going to say you're going to find those salaries everywhere. You might find better. I definitely know there's a lot of places you might find a lower salary too. Number 6, about the teaching environment, is you probably won't be the English teacher of the school. There might be other foreigners as well, but also you might be teaching other subjects besides just English. You might even be hired to teach a grade and just teach all their subjects, like a primary teacher, like there would be at a school in the US. For example, in Honduras, I was hired to teach, I think, reading and spelling for 2 grades. What I ended up teaching was spelling for 4 grades, 3rd through 6th, and then they're like, you're gonna teach world history for 7th grade too. So that was just sort of thrown in there. It was not my expectation at the beginning, but we made it through. In the DR, I was hired to teach 3rd grade. I taught language arts and math is okay. It's 3rd grade. It was fine. The only problem was some students mainly understood Spanish, so I had to explain some things in Spanish, and other students preferred them in English, so I had to balance that. Then my 2nd year, I taught 5th grade language arts and science. So the language arts class, at least in the DR, included everything. It included grammar and spelling and reading and writing. Whereas in Honduras, in the Honduran school, they separated them all into different classes. Grammar and reading were actually taught by Honduran teachers. So you never know what you might be teaching, but English will be one of them. Number 7 is about visa requirements. I cannot speak to all the countries again, but I think in general, the visa is a little bit more on the back end once you're already there, in my personal experience, I'll say. Because I didn't have anything figured out. I was applying to a school in Korea at the same time, but they needed me to be in the process for the visa, which I was not, and that needed to be taken care of a little bit farther in advance. And Honduras was just like, sure, come over here, we'll figure it out. I mean, what they did was they got me residency. Never actually got the card, unfortunately, because of 2020. And in the DR, I just overstayed the tourist visa and pay when I leave at the airport. So it's sort of more in the back end. You don't have to be as prepared, which is sort of what I've figured out as a pattern with these cultures. The last 3 items are just about the language difference and the language barrier. If you speak Spanish, that definitely helps. although you might pick it up quick, you might learn some things from your students. But anyways, number 8 is that your coworkers might be bilingual, but they will definitely test your Spanish. They will definitely involve you more if you can speak Spanish in like social events. So it would be a good idea to learn at least a little bit of Spanish. Number 9, meetings will usually be in Spanish. Sometimes there were expectations that we should all speak English to each other, but then in meetings you'd be like, we're gonna speak Spanish, okay? Hope you're okay. Thankfully I speak Spanish, but at the beginning my Spanish wasn't as great. Number 10 is what to expect from your students. They will be a variety of levels. I had students who didn't speak any English to me and students who were completely fluent in English. And you just have to create an environment where they can all learn, which is hard. One thing I want you to know about your students, they will probably not be very quiet. At least not all of them. There might be a few quiet ones, but altogether they can be very loud. And they will test your Spanish. This might just happen during break times. They say, teacher, say this, say this, say this, or teacher, do you know how to say this? But it also could look like saying something to you really quickly in Spanish during class, something that's relevant to the class, see if you can pick it up, or to just see if they can get away with speaking Spanish, like asking, can I go to the bathroom in Spanish instead of English? Which is always good for them to practice the English, but sometimes they just want to say, okay, go. Sometimes they might say a bad word or swear in Spanish in front of you or to another student and see if you will understand that it's a bad word and get them in trouble for it. That's another test they might do. I could always talk more about my experiences. I have made videos before if you want to check them out, but those are 10 things to know before you teach English abroad in Latin America. I hope you enjoyed them, and if you're a teacher, also I'd love to hear your experiences. If any of these were relatable to you, if they resonate with you, please share below in the comments. Again, these are all just my experience, so if you had a completely different experience, the comments are here for you to write about it. I'd love to hear other teachers' experiences, so share it with someone else who is a teacher maybe. Like the video, subscribe if you want more like this. Thank you so much for watching, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.